I loved the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. As a FNaF fan since 2014, it struck every single note it needed to and then some. In fact, after watching, I felt inspired to add some new merch to DMuted-shop-fourthwall.com. Definitely check this new line out. Keep in mind, however, that it's not a FNaF movie merch line or anything and utilizes no official FNaF characters, just designs inspired by the series. Spoiler warning for the rest of the video going forward. Everything from the set design to the actors casted to the grandiosity of the plot just felt right, and led to easily one of my all-time favorite horror movie experiences. In part because for once I went to see a horror movie where everyone I went with was really into what was happening on screen. I went with UhYeah, Pastra, the Baddest, and David Barron, and we all had a great time. We even watched it the next day just to pick up on anything we missed. It's definitely the kind of movie that deserves at least 2 watches. One for the initial plot and story, and another when you understand everything that's going on from the beginning. But one element that all this time later I still haven't fully wrapped my head around yet comes from the middle of the movie. Specifically, night 4. It's on this night that Mike brings Abby to Freddy's for the second time so that she can play with the animatronics. However, after building their 4 out of tables and chairs, Vanessa realizes it needs a roof and goes into a storage room to get some extra tablecloths. Mike goes with her, and in the storage room they both encounter something very bizarre. It's 92% of my viewers who are not subscribed, so definitely hit that sub button to fix that. Jokes aside, it's a springlock suit with an open up chest. The chest seems to be the only piece of this suit that's actually missing, as its arms and head are intact. Everyone in my group's initial reaction was the exact same. Oh my god, is that Circus Baby?
And the fact that they actually tried turning Abby into Baby.
Yeah,
Yes, they did. That
but
was
they
totally
chose.
Baby.
They made a springlock baby.
And thankfully, it wasn't. Upon a rewatch, we were able to actually determine what the springlock suit even was, although figuring that part out only made things more confusing. This springlock suit was not in fact some early baby animatronic. It was a springlock suit based on the Ella doll. Ella is a more obscure FNaF character originating from the Silver Eyes series of FNaF books. It's a robotic doll designed by Henry, and it's honestly one of the most unsung origin stories out of any FNaF character. Let me tell you what Ella is and why her appearing as a springlock suit here should come off as very alarming. Ella originated as a doll that was owned by Henry in the Silver Eyes universe. When Charlotte, his daughter, was taken and killed by William, Henry cried over the doll, letting his pain and agony seep into it. This act caused the Ella doll to come to life, and Henry became convinced that it was possessed by the spirit of his daughter. This gave Henry new purpose, and thus he designed 4 robot bodies for his daughter's spirit to possess as she grew older. All of these being based on the original Ella doll. The first of these robots would be stored away as a toy, which was activated and brought tea for Charlie when she was older. However, when one of Henry's illusion discs was turned on, instead of Ella, people would see the 3-year-old version of Charlotte. It's a complicated origin, but it explains one important part of Henry's story, why he made the robot Charlies in the first place. His grief and agony ended up animating a doll, and he mistook that animation as possession. He thought that he could still let his daughter live a full life and made the 4 robots as part of that plan. However, he stopped before finishing the 4th, which allowed Afton to swoop in and abduct the unfinished robot for himself, resulting in the 4th Closet's version of Baby. But now, how does this tie into the FNaF movie? Well, let me lay it out. The Ella springlock suit on its own may very well have just been an Easter egg, except it ended up coming back in a huge way. On night 5, Abby is brought to the pizzeria by Golden Freddy. She's then lured backstage by Chica, who shows her the opened up Ella springlock suit. It's at this point Abby becomes frightened and tries to leave, but Chica tries to forcibly stuff her into the suit, one of the few times we actually see that in this movie. In the end, Abby escapes and Chica is temporarily deactivated by Mike and his taser, and the suit is never seen again. But I think what happened here, and who it was happening to, is incredibly important. Abby Schmidt is an innocent young girl who goes to see her favorite animatronic band performing, even when she's told she can't see them. She's then taken by an animatronic and nearly dies by getting stuffed inside a suit. I can't be the only one who sees this. Abby, despite my protests, is our in-universe Elizabeth. Maybe not exactly, after all, Abby is neither an Afton nor is she named Elizabeth, but she's definitely meant to fulfill a somewhat similar role. After all, she is the younger sister of Mike, and like many have pointed out, her name, when rearranged, spells out baby. So I definitely think Abby is our movie version of this character. Kind of. I mean, Elizabeth really ends up getting spread across multiple characters when you also consider Vanessa, but for this discussion, we're only looking at Abby and Mike. So, what's the relevance? Well, presumably there's no Henry of this universe. We only ever hear about Freddy's having one owner, and that owner is William. So without Henry, William is the only one to make the springlock suits and the FNaF 1 cast. which means he's likely the one to create the Ella costume. Do you see where I'm going with this? The movie version of events is a simplified, trimmed down version of events from the games and books. Instead of there being William, Henry, and Edwin as our 3 murdering robot creators, we just have William. Instead of there being this deep family tree of purple dudes and blonde girls, Mike and Abby aren't actually related to William. So let's apply this idea to the Ella suit. What is our simplest explanation? In my eyes, the Ella costume may actually be the movie version of Baby. Not the Baby we know, but an older costume.
You're inside something that came from my old pizzeria. I don't think it was ever used. At least not the way it was meant to be used.
So when me and my friends collectively said Baby, I think we were kind of right. When it comes down to it, the 4 Ella bots that Henry made were all precursors for the novel version of Baby to come out of. I think the same logic applies here, but more directly. But this begs the question, are we actually going to see Circus Baby in the movie series? Frankly, I think it's more likely than not. No matter how much I dislike Circus Baby, she's still a lot of FNaF fans' favorite character, and is definitely one of Scott and Steel Wool's based on how many teasers, Easter eggs, promo images, and merch drops she's in. Like it or not, CB is kinda here to stay, even if it's not in the games. But here's the thing, the Ella and Baby connections run even deeper, because although Ella is probably most well known for her appearance in the Silver Eyes, she's the front page character for the Fazbear Frights story, 1:35 AM. Notably, this cover seems to be what was used to inspire Ella's face in the movie, so we should absolutely consider this version of the character as well. 1:35 AM is one of the most bizarre Frights books, in it that what it confirms about Ella kinda goes against the novel version of the character. Most importantly, this version of Ella is confirmed to be a doll manufactured by Faz-Ent. To me, this goes against the idea of Henry making Ella as a vessel for his daughter, but it does further align with William making Ella to simply be another Fazbear character. However, the big deal with Ella in this story comes much later on. Throughout 1:35 AM, the main character, Delilah, suffers from the Ella doll constantly waking her up at 1:35 in the morning. It kind of has this telltale heart effect on her, driving Delilah further and further into madness, until she eventually gets herself stuck in a vent at a construction site where she's certain the Ella doll would never find her. However, in a later epilogue, it's confirmed that it was not the Ella doll tormenting Delilah, or at least it wasn't solely the Ella doll. Eleanor, the Frights counterpart to Baby, was involved, using the doll to essentially torture Delilah. But honestly, I think the Silver Eyes version is the much more interesting and likely outcome. So what could the story be like if this is the case? I kind of have 2 possible ideas. The first is that in the second, and maybe third movie, we're introduced to more Ella suits. These could be upgraded or even older than the first, but they would have to notably be Ella, maybe with her features changing over time. This Ella has peach-toned skin and a nutcracker style of mouth. Maybe another has a pure white face and a clown nose. Eventually though, we'll find out that the most recent version of Ella is a clown named Circus Baby. We already know Scott isn't above the idea of putting the Fun Times and presumably Baby into a movie, as one of his earlier scrap scripts did mention that they were present in one draft. I think for Scott, the Fun Times would require build-up, and I think Ella could very well be the first step, laid out for us to find and analyze. But if Ella really is being laid out to bring Rise to Baby, then how will that happen? And this is why I think there's 2 possible outcomes. The first is that Abby at some point dies and is stuffed into the newest Ella, which would be Baby. She might even be scooped just like Elizabeth was. I don't want to take this option too seriously, since I don't think Scott or anyone involved would really want to kill Abby as a character. But I do think it's possible. If this is the case, I can see it playing out essentially like how Sister Location did, with Mike trusting the animatronic version of his sister before she ultimately betrays him when it's revealed that she's still under Afton's control. However, I also see this version of Baby breaking out of this control and defeating or even destroying Afton, much like the Fun Times did at the end of the 4th closet. But door number 2 says that Baby is not possessed by Abby. So then, what gives? Well, I think Baby's main role then would be to try and kill Abby herself, try and scoop her or otherwise kidnap her. It's clear by the end of the first film that although Afton is intent on just killing Mike, he does want Abby to possess an animatronic. She becomes a new target for him, and one I think he could very well design a new animatronic just for her, maybe based on the original Ella. Does this mean Baby will be successful? No, but I do think it would be a good way to incorporate her as a villain without directly rehashing the plot of Sister Location. The only thing that gives me pause for either option is actually that other Elizabeth stand-in I mentioned earlier, Vanessa. Late on in the film, Vanessa reveals that William Afton is her father, and as an adult, she's been a sort of accomplice to his crimes, kept under a psychological thumb where she can't refuse him, at least until Abby gets involved. And to be honest, I don't think this is the end of that skewed loyalty. I think it was very intentional on Scott's part to make the character named Vanessa our acting accomplice. Although she remains a generally morally gray character until the end of the movie, I have a feeling that in a later entry, she may take that full plunge into the dark side. I think we may eventually see the rise of Vanny. How? I'm not exactly sure. The movie has so far simplified many other games' storylines, so if I had to take a wild shot in the dark, I'm gonna guess that in the, call it, third movie, Vanessa will end up being possessed by the ghost of her dad, giving her a split personality that continues his life's work, killing buttloads of innocents. But if this happens, then I don't really see a need for Baby in the story. Much like the regular FNaF story, she'd just come across as padding, unnecessary, and overcomplicating things. Between these two options, it's hard to say which I find more likely. Of course, they could just be an entirely different movie since it's a planned trilogy, but I'm really unsure of what the next film will really give us. In any case, I think the Ella suit is far more than just a reference or Easter egg. I think it's a clue, something we need to keep our eyes on. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm overthinking things. But when I saw Ella, I knew that there had to be something larger at play here. Besides, if it is just an Easter egg, why her? Why not any of the many other book original characters, many of whom are either established animatronics or even established springlock suits? Ella means something more, at least to me, and I'm very interested in seeing where this character ends up going. If you enjoyed this little mini theory, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.